Hello, my name is Matthew, and in addition to being a terrible interior decorator, I make games from time to time. I've been making games for over 10 years now, and though recently I've had the privilege to work on some big AAA games like Fortnite and the team that made Mafia 3, I have also made a lot of indie games. In total, I've maybe made like 20 games over my short lifetime, and honestly, that doesn't really seem like a lot, but it has been a real journey in the process. I think you learn so much from each project, just not only how to make games, but how to code in general. I thought it'd be fun to go back to some of my first creations and talk about them, to give you guys a little bit of a background story on my work here. So I'm going to show you a website I made and then the first video game I ever made. And so I thought this website was interesting because I actually started to learn how to code with HTML, which is not even a coding language, frankly. But and this is not, I don't think even something I coded actually, but this is my inspiration. This is even before I started to learn HTML and a little bit of JavaScript, CSS stuff. This was a blog that my mom made for me, Matthew Mark's website. And I did a little contest here. I said, hey, name my, or here's my post here. I said, oh, no, that's just a picture. I said, name my frog. And my dad recommended the name Clover. My mom recommended the name Ribbit. And this is 2007. And my grandma recommended the name Greenie. I chose none of those. I named my frog Mr. Toad because I thought that was funny. And so this is actually the first thing. I guess all these posts say that my mom made it, but I probably made it using her account. This is the first thing I ever made, which is kind of crazy. I guess that's still around. I used to write short stories, and so I have that. But I guess in terms of technical stuff, this is probably the first thing I ever made, technically. A little blog spot. And then I learned how to code a little bit in Java, right? And so I took a course at Johns Hopkins University Center for Talented Youth, and that is this game, Chomp. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys this game, Chomp. It is it's a clone of the video game Feeding Frenzy, if you're familiar with that game at all, which is much better. I mean, it's not a good clone. It's rather reductive. I don't think there's any music, but here's actually the main menu. So we've got this guy, a talking fish on the wall, who I thought was going to be really funny. And he says, howdy, my name's Sammy, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to the good old Deep Blue. The arrow keys will move you in the directions they point. To the left of me are your lives. And under them is the food bar. Eat smaller fish to fill that up, and you'll be king of the sea in no time. That's actually very good. So I'm going to be roasting on my game as well while we go. So that's actually a really good tutorialization. I mean, everybody hates clicking through text these days, so some sort of emergent tutorialization would probably be better. This idea of like, oh, you figure out that those are your lives as you start dying and seeing them depleting. But it's actually pretty good. Oh, and one final thing, kiddo. I know you're a clownfish, but let's just save the jokes for me. Now swim, stage 1. Okay, so, oh shit. Okay, so here we go. So here are the arrow keys. And it's kind of cool. It's got different animations here. And so these are, this is a fish from my grandma's bathroom. The yellow fish. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it's another one of those talking wall fishes. And then the red fish are Swedish fish. And then the clownfish in the middle. Okay, so that's why he made the joke. I think the dialogue actually holds up. It's kind of funny. But the clownfish is probably because I saw Finding Nemo recently or something like that. And so as I'm going along here, Sammy at the top is randomly choosing a joke. So he says, that was a good one, right? What do you find on a small beach? Microwaves. What side of the fish has the most scales? The outside. Okay, so just a lot of fish puns here, just to keep the player interested. And honestly, I think if it was portrayed with audio, then that would work pretty well. But oh shit, I just died. Okay, I thought the stage would have ended, but it turns out we just keep going. And he says chomp when you get eaten, so that's the name of the game. Chomp. And as the stages progress, I'm imagining the difficulty is getting harder, or maybe they're getting faster, I'm not sure. My grandma swims faster than you. So yeah, the game has no audio. I don't know why that is. Maybe it was hard to do audio, or I didn't know how. Because it doesn't really work to have the text up there when I'm trying to be focused on what's happening down here. Oh, that was cool. My guy kind of like did a position where he was diving for a second. So these are the different stages. Fish food. Yeah, look at that. Yeah, he kind of... Oh, yeah. If you swim for a little while, he goes sort of like in a diagonal direction. That's kind of cool. It should probably happen for all the fish. And you shouldn't need to swim that long for that to happen, but... Winner! Wow, you actually did it. Congrats, kiddo. And that's me, the winner right there. So that is... that's my game. That's the first game I ever made. Isn't that crazy? And so, if you are familiar with the game Pong, which is where you've got sort of these two sticks and the ball bounces back and forth, this game I built on top of a Pong engine. So, as you can imagine, the ball going up and down, back and forth, I created fish to do that exact same thing. It's the fish that are going back and forth, up and down, and you essentially are dodging the ball instead of trying to hit it with the paddle. So that's sort of the origin. And I wanted to jump into the actual code here so we can roast my coding style. This is the NetBeans IDE for a language called Java. Java, of course, created by Oracle. This is, I think, still the most popular language in the world. But C#, owned by Microsoft, sort of the new kid on the block, maybe a little bit more sexy, a little bit faster. But yeah, so this is Java, and I opened it up. However, it seems like it's all in assembly, so I had some trouble reading it. When I opened it up in this NetBeans program I downloaded, it's all assembly stuff. However, I was able to download something called the Java decompiler, which decompiled these class objects, and it will now allow me to read the actual source code. I have no idea why the IDE didn't do that itself. Probably because I'm doing it wrong. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've coded Java. But here are some of the classes. And, I mean, this entire class is basically an enum and a static reference to that, which is probably doesn't make any sense. One of the things with object-oriented programming is it can become a little heavy-handed, and this is probably an example of just me misunderstanding the principles. This is the player. So we're seeing a lot of like magic numbers pop up here. Magic number is whenever you reference a number explicitly in code for no real apparent reason other than it feels good. So something like, keeping the y value greater than 858, it seems kind of oddly specific. It probably would have made sense to abstract the screen size and then derive this number based on that. Because if you ever need to scale the screen, all these numbers are going to change. So yeah, there's a lot of magic numbers here. One of the things we're going to see the most is just repeat code. So for example, all of this stuff is very similar, but all that's changing here, I think, is this value and what is it doing here? I'm not exactly sure. Oh, this looks like it's determining which angle. Yeah, so it's looking at the dy dx. So that's the change in the position, and it's saying based on the change in position, either put the fish facing one way, the other, or on the diagonals. So that's what's going on there. Very fun stuff. Here's some key release things. There was actually a bit of an Easter egg, which I put in at one point, where if you pushed a certain letter on the keyboard, all of the fish would turn into the picture of Selena Gomez, who was my celebrity crush at the time. This is around, again, 2007, I think, is when they had the TV show Wizards of Waverly Place, maybe. So this was my celebrity crush, I guess, in middle school. However, I was looking through the source code and source files, and I couldn't find that. So I would have shown that to you guys if it was there. That would have been very, very funny. So this class is a whole bunch of nothing, just setting up the board. Again here, so what we're seeing is there's this concept of a monolith. If you've ever heard of that in programming, it's definitely an anti-pattern, which means something do not do this. And the idea in a monolith is instead of splitting your code up in reasonable sections, you instead squeeze it all into one file. And so you'll see the scrollability here. This is a pretty small file. That's because I had a monolith here. This is a huge file, which we'll talk about in just a second. But this last file, the drone, I think it's just there to keep track of some values. And so that appears to be what's going on here. So I guess there's a drone for each perhaps there's a drone for each fish, and this is sort of the object representing the fish. I'm not exactly sure. But I know for one thing in game development, we're never going to be using doubles. The precision provided by doubles is kind of unnecessary. So these would almost certainly be floats. But who cares, man? That's another thing too. It's like I'm roasting myself, but at the same time, it's like, man, if somebody's out there programming for the first time, what a rush, what a concept that they're actually doing it, going for it. That's the hard part, just trying to get started. Whether or not you can, cross your T's and dot your I's, like it's all bullshit compared to just starting. Because at the end of the day, it's like, I don't know, man. We just need more people who are excited about coding, not being sticklers for the rules. Because at the end of the day, I just play the game and it's fucking fun, Who cares if it's laggy as shit? I don't give a damn. But we'll continue with the roast nonetheless. So here we have basically a whole list of images independently initialized. It probably makes sense for these to be an array. And actually, there's something pretty crazy going on here, which is that as you saw, and I think I have to exit out to restart the game, but as you saw during the game, there was, where was it? As you saw during the game, the guy, Sammy, would do various jokes in the top right corner. Those jokes, actually, every single one is an image. Okay, so that is baked text in an image, which I guess I'm randomly, why do I got so many folders here? Which I guess I'm randomly grabbing, which is obviously a terrible way to do it. I mean, clearly you can't localize it if it's an image. So this is an image which I'm displaying in the top right here. Oh, and it comes with a text box too. But this should just be, some sort of way to write text on the screen in the top right, obviously. But like I said, who cares if it gets the job done? So this is kind of ridiculous, but it's 19 different images for the different text, where it should be one image basically for the text box, and then you're just writing text in the middle with some sort of text library. But hey, man, you do it how you could do it. If that's the only way you know how to do it, then, shit, get it done. These are the different locations. So I noticed that orange fish and red fish they're treated as completely separate in this code base. However, it would probably make sense for you to have them really share as much as possible, because they're both essentially fish. All that's different with the red fish and the orange fish is their graphic. I don't even think the hitbox changes based on where their mouth is. So it probably doesn't make sense to have, because you're going to see there's for loops for each one of them, and it's probably unnecessary. So here we have an integer for the food consumed, and then a static integer. I don't know why it's static, but this is, I guess, keeping track of how far we are in the Sammy progression, which is him going through the tutorial for you. So here again, here's where we're pulling in all those quotes individually, all those images. And again, here's where we do the red fish calculation, and here's where we do the orange fish calculation. And I noticed there's actually something pretty insane going on here. I am essentially serializing out the position, position and I think direction of each one of the fish every single frame, which is kind of crazy. So that's what all this, like, a location is a string? What? That doesn't make any sense. What's happening is there's a list of strings. I'm pulling out that string, which is, I guess, locations, and then I think I'm drawing a fish at each one of the positions, which is an insane way to do it. That should not be done. Serialization is the process of when we take data and we squeeze it together in a way that's more compressed for the sake of maybe transferring over in a network packet or saving the disk. So that might be useful, right? Because you might want to Well, it's sort of like if you see the number 101, you might think the number stands for 101 things, but it could represent, if we're serializing, we might just squeeze them together. So we might say, oh, the first two digits represent the number of lives you have, and one digit represents whether you're looking left or right. So if it's a 0 or 1, maybe it's binary, it could represent your direction, and then the 10 is maybe, what your speed is or something like that. Or the whole thing could be binary. The 101 could be a binary sequence. However, this is not what's happening here. Instead, I'm inserting delimiters. So what I mean to say is there are reasonable reasons why you might do serialization. This is not reasonable. This is insane. Where I have some sort of string like this where I guess it's the change in the x, the change in the y. Oh no, the current x, the current y, the change in the x, the change in the y. And they're all separated by either a period, a comma, an asterisk, or a hash. Which doesn't make any sense. It's crazy. But that is how I did it. And I guess I parsed it out. So this would, of course, make a lot more sense if I just had some sort of data struct-like object, a class, maybe if I was putting the data in the drone and then having that saved out. But the crazy things you do, man, I'm like, it's honestly a shock to me that this even works, based on how ridiculous this is. So here we're checking for collisions. We want to see if you've taken enough damage. We'll end the game. System print loser. Or if it's the orange fish or red fish, we might kill them. So this is based on how big you are. Oh, okay, so I didn't realize that. But I guess based on how many fish you've collected, if you are a big fish, then maybe you're allowed to kill the orange ones. I'm not sure. But that's kind of cool. And here's where we're painting. Okay, so this is where it gets a little crazy. So we have a switch statement here where all that we're changing, literally all that we're changing is this one. Oh, whoops. Is there where I could go back? No, there isn't. We'll scroll it back down. All we're changing is this one parameter, this one little parameter. And so this switch statement has over 20 cases, and it's only just changing that one parameter, right? So this is definitely something that should have been abstracted. It's insane that there's like 30 lines of code right here on the same bullshit. But it's crazy, man. It's fun. It's wild. And then what's going on here? So here we're checking if the damage take... Oh my god, this looks really bad. Look at this if statement. This is insane, dude. Holy cow. So this is saying if damage taken is greater than 1, draw the first damage token. If it's greater than 2, then draw the second damage token. So these are the red bars that represent... Or no, this is the red X's, which represent how much, whether or not your life has been lost. And then these are the red bars that represent how much food has been consumed, right? So this is clearly a terrible way to do it, to have an if statement that's, like this if statement is 15 branches deep, it's wild. But man, what a privilege to look back at code I wrote 13 years ago and see the progress over 13 years. Wow. That's insane. Here I'm independently going through and serializing the red fish, the orange fish, and then maybe the red fish again. I'm not exactly sure why. It looks here. So here I am constructing some sort of rectangle. I don't even know what I was doing here. And then here we're polling for key input. Wow. Wow. So that is it. That is it, folks. This is the first video game I've ever made and the first website I made. Even though I didn't program the website myself, I used Blogspot or something like that. So pretty crazy. I guess the moral of the story is, and something I wanted to hit home on if it wasn't evident already, is who cares, man, if my code was shit, right? It's like over time you're going to get better. You're going to realize the mistakes. And what's most important is that you start, that you put actual code into the engine and you start making mistakes as early as possible, start failing. And then I think in the process, you'll fall in love with it, hopefully, and the mistakes won't seem so bad. I remember coding this project. I distinctly remember coding this project and having a bug. And I didn't have the technical know-how to debug it. And there was, nobody in my family knew how to program. I didn't have a teacher at that time, nobody to talk to. No friends of mine knew how to program because I was learning on my own from YouTube in middle school, right? It was a very solo endeavor. I was a very quiet, young man, I guess, in that sense, at least. Not in all senses, but in that sense. And so I had this bug, and I couldn't find it, and I searched for it, like literally spent over 10 hours just looking through this code trying to figure out what the bug was. And eventually I figured out it was I had like added the delta position when I should have subtracted it. Something silly like that, like a plus sign should have been a minus sign, and I finally fixed it. And I was so relieved that I actually printed out the system debug statement and I put it on the wall, and I was like, this is the hardest bug I've ever faced. I'm going to save this with me for always. And man, like those memories are crazy. But I'm so privileged to be able to go back and actually see this code base, to actually see the work I've done. So it's been a trip. I hope you enjoyed it as well. And if you're getting started programming, then don't be afraid to make mistakes, because you'll figure it out eventually. And at the end of the day, if your game's fun, then who gives a shit? I'll catch you guys in the next one.